deep down inside, people have a fear of being condemned. So when people say the Shroud of Turin is a fake or that angel footage is fake, that's their response to fear. And the forensic facts and the truth be damned. Because at the end of the day, it's all about me and what I want, and I want that to be fake. We are looking at the finest quality replica of the Shroud of Turin that exists in the world. $2,000. This is our best fake. The best imitation of the Shroud that exists in the world. Yet under microscopic examination, under high-powered microscope, we could zoom in and in less than 60 seconds discover immediately, oh, they used pigment to make this. This is man-made. When the Shroud of Turin research project went to Turin, Italy, the first thing they did was they looked at the Shroud image under high-powered microscope. To their amazement and surprise, guess what? No paint. You cannot hide paint from high-powered microscopes. How much faster do you think we could debunk anyone else's fake of the Shroud as being exactly what it is, an imitation of the original, but not matching any of its unique characteristics? We are going to be looking at close-ups of the highest resolution images of the Shroud that exist. Of course, we can see visible teeth. We can see the metacarpal bones in the hand. This is a partial X-ray image. Left hand over right wrist and fingers are bent, and the image that resides on the top layer of this Syrian weave 8x2 cubit pure linen cloth only penetrates 1 or 2 micrometers into the 15 micrometer wide fabric. It is a scientific impossibility to create an image with this kind of superficiality by touching it with any kind of man-made object. The coloring process is not due to adding material to the cloth, but non-material entities, such as radiated energy coming from the body, charged particle radiation, and or electromagnetic radiation. When this image process took place, there was separation between the body and the cloth. That is an inescapable forensic fact of this case, in spite of the mass amount of false info about the Shroud on internet. This image contains high-resolution, forensically accurate 3D info. To create forensically accurate 3D info, you must have a forensically accurate 3D body as the role model. That is the key word, forensically accurate. That was confirmed by forensic pathologists and also confirmed by a scientific instrument, a VP8 analyzer, an impartial witness that doesn't care if Jesus is the Son of God or not. And this witness tells us with certainty the body was levitated between the two halves of the cloth during the image process. There is no escaping that fact.
This is what the Shroud of Turin really looks like. Not the high contrast internet version that most people see. You can step back, you can see how subtle the image is, and it just barely penetrates the 15 micrometer fibril, only 1 or 2 micrometers. And separation of colored versus uncolored fibers to make up this image, little pixelated microscopic dots, is separated at 15 micrometers. That's the max possible on the linen. Couldn't be better than that. At various points of the image, not the resolution of the whole image, but where the body was close to the cloth. Of course, the hands. You can see the metacarpal bones. Areas of the image that were farther away from the cloth didn't image at all. In some cases, the feet. You'll notice on the image in the Shroud, there's no image here at all. It completely fades out. You can only see blood stains. So the part of the body during the image process that had the greatest separation of all is here. There's the knees. As you can see, the image process stops completely. There's nothing. No feet. Where are the feet at? The feet were too far away from the cloth to image. It's not saying that there was not a light energy coming out of that part of the body, but having that extra distance it has to travel. By inverse square law, when that moving electrical signal has to go from here to here, it slows down in Hertz frequency. You could say, let's say it started out at 3 trillion cycles per second. By the time it gets to there, slows down to 1 trillion cycles per second. But that difference in Hertz frequency, when this light energy from the body makes contact with the fabric, is no longer sufficient enough to cause the rapid aging effect. And that's because the feet were too far away from the cloth for the image process to take place. Same thing would happen if we attempted to make a hologram of this rock and we move this away from the film plate too far. We're going to get no image at all. So the image process on the Shroud of Turin, the forensic evidence tells a story of what?
A paranormal event. A paranormal event. Love is more powerful than death. Powerful than death. Powerful than death. Powerful than death.
The hands were close. The face was close. The face was the closest of all. That's why the face has such good resolution. And why are those lines along the side of the face? It's 2 blank lines. Make note of that. Well, there's 2 lines going down each side of the face image. That's just virgin fabric. It's untouched. There's nothing there. And you see the same thing when you make, I put this statue in a photocopier scanner and wow, lo and behold, I'm getting those dark lines along the sides. That's because there's too much distance there as well between the scanner and the face for that to image. The same thing with a hologram. Hologram is not going to image the side of this rock. Can't. It's extremely compelling evidence of what? That's what it's evidence of. This part of the face did not image at all because it's too far away from the cloth. Plus it's way on the side. And when the cloth made contact with his face, the blood made contact with the fabric. But when the fabric was pulled straight over his face, and then the image process occurred, it creates the optical illusion that the blood from the side of his face is actually in his hair. And we see that here. These blood stains, those are from the side of the cheek. But what I've done, since this is a museum quality replica of the Shroud, and the separation between those bloodstains is in fact approximately, not exactly to the millimeter, 7 inches. I replicated them on this piece of cloth right here. And we're going to take it and put it on the face of Jesus. This is a life cast body. It's made of flexible rubber. So that's the real dimensions of a real human head. So as you can see, there's a separation about 7 inches between those bloodstains, exactly how they are. And this cloth made contact with a 3-dimensional, real, genuine, dead person, scourged and crucified. There's the nose, There's the forehead there. Sides of the cheeks are here. This blood is making contact with the side of the cheeks. And when I go around to this side and I release that, you can see that. You can clearly see this blood stain that appears to be in the hair because of the image process is what it was actually not. And then of course there's the number 3 blood stain. From the perspective of Jesus on his left side. And this is the position of the cloth during the image process, which was approximately 1 or 2 centimeters away from the face, so it was really close. But this is proof of 3 things. 1, bloodstains are first. 2, the image is a secondary event that occurs 48 to 72 hours after the blood made contact with this fabric. And 3, there was separation between the body and the cloth during the image process. Can anyone imagine if you ask 1,000 people to make a face image on linen, illustrate some blood going down the cheeks and some hair, how many people would leave 2 blank lines on their image? Allow me to answer that question. Not one person.
Note, the thumbs are not visible. That's because when a Roman crucifixion nail goes through the wrist, it strikes a nerve and causes the thumbs to turn inward.
Part of the beard section is missing. And people say, well, the man in the shroud looks too old. Did Jesus really have a white beard? Well, did Jesus really have white blood? Of course not. The reason that the beard has what appears to be white in it, that's pulmonary edema fluid and blood that exited the nose and mouth. And we see the same thing here on the head cloth. This is the napkin that was about his head, not lying with the linen clothes, the grave clothes, but wrapped together in a place by itself. This was the position that Jesus was on the cross when they applied this cloth. 21st century forensic science determined this cloth wrapped the head of a person in an upright position whose head was leaning down 70 degrees down and 20 degrees to the right. And then the body was laid in a horizontal position. But this cloth is kept in Oviedo, Spain. It was authenticated by the Spanish government in the year 1054, March 14th, to be the property of Jesus. These are the most significant match points from the shroud to the head cloth. Both cloths have type AB blood, the rarest blood type in the world. Both cloths have type AB blood with high bilirubin content. Both cloths have type AB blood with myrrh and aloes, as written in the gospel account. And there came also Nicodemus, who first came to Jesus by night and brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes about 100 pound weight. On these 2 cloths, just to start, we have type AB blood with elevated levels of bilirubin and presence of myrrh and aloes, and pollens from a thorn plant from Jerusalem on both cloths, and it was recently determined that the pollens and the blood arrived on this cloth at the same time. That would get the attention of any forensic detective, homicide detective working on this case and got that lab report back. That would raise that person's antenna. The edema fluid and blood is a match from the side wound on the man of the shroud to this blood here. This is a mixture of pulmonary edema fluid from the lungs and blood. We see that same type of blood coming from the side wound of Jesus. There's a rare calcite that can only be found in tombs around the Damascus Gate, around this area of the cloth where the nose would have been. And also on the shrouded turn, in the area of the nose, it's the same type of rare calcite. Point number 7, the radiation damage. This cloth has severe radiation damage, matching the same level of radiation damage as the linen wrappings of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which we know are over 2,000 years old. And the Shroud of Turin has what that same level of radiation damage. An indication of what? Significant age. So the question to ask would be, well, if the shroud has radiation damage on it, severe, matching the radiation damage of the linen wrappings of the Dead Sea Scrolls, how could it be only 500 or 600 years old? Well, there's a simple answer to that question. That can't be possible. 21st century forensic science determined these two claws, the shroud and the headcloth, must be roughly the same age.
The blood on these two claws passed over a dozen tests. To be genuine blood 4 times what is required by law. It's not just the rarest blood type in the world, type AB. It's type AB blood with elevated levels of bilirubin, as would be present in a person who died a violent death, mixed with myrrh and aloes,
and pollens from a thorn plant from Jerusalem on both claws.
We could go through every autopsy report ever filed in the history of the earth and not find another match to that.
It was determined by the Spanish Center for Syndenology, by 21st century forensic science, the person whose head that made contact with this cloth is that person right there.
It's an obvious image of Jesus. Anyone in disagreement with that? You're not being honest with yourself. The crown of thorns. Who else had a thorn plant from Jerusalem put on their head? Who else was mocked as a king, scourged and crucified, and had their right side pierced with a Roman lancia? A Roman lancia is 4 centimeters in width. A first century Roman lancia. Note those words. First century Roman lancia is 4 centimeters wide. How wide is the side wound on the man in the shroud? 4 centimeters. That's not a coincidence. The fake theory involves adding material to the cloth to create coloring. As soon as you hear that, you know you're getting false information. As soon as you hear someone defend the carbon dating, you know you're dealing with an idiot. We know that test was not valid. We know the samples they tested contained madder root dye and cotton. That's scientifically peer-reviewed. All skeptic fake theories involve adding material to the linen flax to change this color, because that's how people think. Well, in order to create coloring, I have to add something to that linen. I've got to put paint on it. I've got to touch it with some kind of substance from the earth, when in fact that is not true. All skeptic theories are wrong. So the coloring on the shroud is due to a rearrangement of the electrons on the outside of the carbon atoms that make up the linen flax, from single electron bonds to double electron bonds. Linen flax is made up mostly of carbon atoms. Single electron bond carbon atom groups. But where there's coloring on the shroud, that has been changed. The electrons around the outside of the atoms. Look at the outside of the atoms we have on display right now. Notice the shift in position from single electron bonds to double electron bonds. When electrons are rearranged, when they change position, that changes the way that particular creation, that substance, that material, it changes the way it absorbs and reflects light, thus imparts a new color to the molecules. Atoms grouped together form molecules. The only way we've been able to duplicate that process on a few linen fibrils is by firing an argon fluoride laser directed at one of these fibrils at several trillion cycles per second for less than a billionth of a second. It's the only way we've been able to change single electron bonds to double electron bonds. It goes without saying this is not a coloring process they were using back in a medieval time. This is an image not made by human hands. That's why the Shroud of Turin was called the image of Edessa, the image not made by human hands. That's what the Shroud of Turin was called in the early centuries. And you may be asking yourself a question right now and saying, are you telling us that this Shroud of Turin is the true image of Jesus and physical evidence of his resurrection? Yes, that is exactly what I am saying.
Behold, behold, he is coming, he is coming.
The Shroud of Turin research project determined by microchemistry, microphotographs, X-ray fluorescence, infrared and UV light evaluations, no material was added to these linen fibrils to create coloring. If material was added to the linen to create coloring, it would be visible under a high-powered microscope. When people say the shroud is a fake, it's the same thing as saying, I think that the grass, all the grass on the earth, is fake grass. I think some medieval forger was able to paint all the grass green and then hide that from high-powered microscopes. Found some way to paint, to add material to grass or to linen and then be able to hide that from microscopes. I painted it, but you can't see it, right? For someone to believe that material was added to the linen fibrils, to the fabric on the shroud to create coloring, but then not be able to see it when those linen fibrils are examined under high-powered microscope, you would have to rank yourself among the stupidest people to ever walk the face of the earth. The superficial image over the bloodstains is not unlike holographic information. If we were to look at the image under a microscope, under a high-powered microscope, the Shroud of Turin image, we would be looking at something like this. Microscopic shades of light and dark, microscopic dots that create the optical illusion of depth. We would all be in 100% agreement. I handed this film plate to somebody and I said, I want you to analyze this holographic information, and then with your hand, with a statue or with paint, I want you to replicate it. But just replicate it, and here's a sample of it. Make another one. It's a scientific impossibility. Because with the human hand, you cannot create separation of colored versus uncolored parts of a film plate at 15 micrometers. But that's what we have on, guess what? The Shroud of Turin. There's a reason why the Shroud of Turin has microscopic shades of light and dark that create the optical illusion of depth forensically accurate to the object. It's because it is a holographic image. That's not a random accident. One thing that gives us insight into the image process on the Shroud of Turin would be a laser printer. A laser printer applies toner by controlled electrostatic discharge, meaning electrical signals moving through space, then making contact with the printing medium. In this case, the printing medium is a 3/1 herringbone twill fabric, 8x2 cubits of a Syrian cubit. So a piece of linen is used as a printing medium, a holographic film plate. As difficult or as improbable as that may seem, the forensic evidence tells us with unmistakable clarity the body is this source of light and energy that's making contact with these fibrils, outer fibrils of linen, causing them to age rapidly. A German radiologist named Dr. Hermann Moder made this statement in regards to his investigation with the shroud. Shroud was used to enshroud a corpse in the image as the result of some form of interaction between body and cloth, and does not derive from the use of paint, powder, acid, or other materials which could have been used to create an image on linen. This is a quote by Italian scientist Paolo DiLazzaro, who tried for 5 years to replicate the shroud image and concluded that it was produced by UV light, but the UV light necessary to reproduce the image exceeds the maximum power released by all UV light sources available today. The time for such a burst would be shorter than 1/40 billionth of a second, and the intensity of the UV light would have to be around several billion watts.
Sherlock Holmes, the great detective, when all possibilities have been eliminated, all suspects have been interviewed, and there's only one person left standing. No matter how improbable that may seem, it must be the truth.
This next clip is a reenactment of the resurrection. Laser reference beam causes DNA to emit light. As a result, an interference pattern of light waves was created.
Which is proof of what?
A paranormal event. Love is more powerful than death.
So we have something real to offer to you today. We are bringing to the person that may be in darkness some light, to the person who is in despair some hope, to the person who has doubt some faith, to the person who is in sadness a big bag of joy for you today. So give the Lord Jesus a chance. That said, thanks for watching this video. May the Holy Spirit of our Lord Jesus be with you.